to be in the office so much this week that I didn't watch anything live. I didn't watch anything day of except for Raw, because Raw was early on Monday. So thankfully, I caught up, and then I read the Observer, so I feel like I'm not behind anymore. But this was a crazy week for me. So I'm glad I had the issue so that I could feel at least that I knew what was going on. But otherwise, I was like, how are we going to do this today? But the issue was caught me up, and I was able to get through a lot of the TV, so I am ready to go. I guess the first thing I wanted to talk to you about, because you had talked with Brian on Wednesday night about the AEW experiment of running these 1-hour shows after big live events and trying to take advantage of this possibly new viewer. And you had said that they were giant successes. And I was thinking about how are they defining what the success is, because they're inheriting a giant lead-in, and then from there, how much of the lead-in are they looking to capitalize on? Because at least on the first night, it looked like it stayed a little bit. Second night, maybe not so much. But like, what do they consider a success actually?
Well, I mean, as far as tickets and TNT, it's keeping a number higher than they would normally get in that time slot coming off of the shows, and this is way above what they would with like a movie or something like that.
But it was similar to. Outside of that big lead-in, wasn't it similar to a normal Collision audience? Or
it was similar to a normal Collision audience. But you have to remember that that last half hour was, what is it, 12:15? Not 9:45. So, if the number's similar, but so much later. So I mean, it's not like from 12:30 to 12. What's the second night was 11:15, 12:15. So like 11:45 to 12:15. It's way above what they would have done had they plugged a movie in that time slot. So I mean, from that perspective, it was a success for the station. They kept a lot more people than normal. For AEW, it's like the alternative is that you don't run the show, which is what happened last year. Right. So instead, AEW got a great benefit. They got their the Sunday show was the highest rated show they've had since September. For which was the Dynamite from Arthur Ashe Stadium. So it's in that sense, it was a big success for the company. They had more eyes on them. I mean, as far as how effective it was, I mean, to me, like the one thing was that in the first half hour, you're gonna have a really big audience, and the key is it's not even your regular audience; it's actually more of a basketball audience. So to me, like the thing is the last half hour, you're gonna be a lot lower. So that going in. So the idea to me is that you present something really special, and it's not even a match. I would just do like a killer angle, come up with a great angle for the pay-per-view, because that's the main thing you're selling right now. They didn't do that. I mean, they went with Daniel Garcia and Adam Cole in a 20-minute normal match, which was a normal match. It didn't do anything for me special. And the other one was the trios, with the Death Riders against Top Flight and AR Fox, and it's like the match was good. They're both good matches, but they were not. Neither of them were anything special. I didn't think, when they did the Australia show, they opened with the Kenny Omega and Ospreay against Takeshita and Kyle Fletcher match, which was phenomenal. And like to me, like that at least is you've got people. And I can even tell you the story. With my son and his in Trinity, went to they were at their favorite sushi restaurant in Santa Rosa, and they were texting me from the restaurant because the station was on I think it's football game, right?
It was basketball All-Star.
Oh, the All-Star Saturday night, of course. Yeah, they were watching it at the restaurant All-Star Saturday night, and they were texting me because they kept it on the Omega match at the restaurant, and they said like people are going crazy in this restaurant. They've never seen anything like this, and they were like all excited to tell me. And I go, where are you? And I said, we're at Paradise Sushi in Roman Park or Santa Rosa, somewhere up there. But anyway, so they were telling me about how so to me that's perfect. You know what I mean? Because but again, it's like that's a really unusual level of match. Adam Cole and Daniel Garcia is not going to do that. People are going to probably set up professional wrestling, whatever. So to me, like the whole thing is that you really want something. I mean, you can't have a match like that all the time, but again, you only get these opportunities, 4 or 5 times a year maybe. And to me, it's very important to take advantage of those opportunities to wow people, make new fans, rather than here we are. I mean, like with both of those shows, like they went right into the match too. It's not like part of the thing of a big match, championship matches, the aura preceding the match. You know what I mean? They just went right into wrestling. I mean, there was no big video package telling you how great this match is going to be or backstory or anything. Just two dudes, especially like Adam Cole and Daniel Garcia, just two dudes. They look like normal guys, and they're in there and doing a wrestling match. And if you're a wrestling fan, that's fine. But the thing is that you're appealing to basketball fans essentially. And I don't know that means anything to basketball fans. I mean, they're just kind of watching, right, whatever.
So the reason why I asked that question is because as you guys were having this conversation, and you kept saying it was a giant success. My question, as if I was
it was a giant rating success. I would not say it was a giant success.
Because I kept going like I'm speaking to my phone. A success for who? Because when I saw the spoilers after that show, my first thought was, okay, Tony's being a great, valuable, flexible partner, but he's not putting his best foot forward necessarily to take advantage based on that.
I totally agree there. Absolutely. Yeah, I would say what I called a success was it was a rating success that will encourage TNT to go, hey, you know what? Rather than preempt these guys, they'll be able to keep an audience better than anything else we're going to put in that time slot. Yes. So therefore, it's valuable. And the other thing is that it's more valuable to do 2 1-hour shows than 1 2-hour show.
Yes.
So it gives you double because they didn't have like with a 2-hour show, they would have one chance at doing something special for these viewers. And again, most of the time they're only going to get the 2-hour show on Saturday. But if you have something like this, like where you've got playoffs on Saturday and Sunday, maybe look and just go, hey, let's do it this way. This way is actually better for us as a station because we get 2 good ratings instead of 1. And then the other one, the first hour after the game is more important. The second hour, obviously, you're going to go down. So I mean, it's so that as far as like to benefit AEW for future programming, it was a success. As far as what they did with the time slot they were given, I was disappointed too. And even on the Sunday show, like I just assumed, when they booked the Dralistico and Mordos match, that they'll do that, and at least it's not normal pro wrestling, and it's a style that a lot of casual people might look at and just go, oh, that's different than what we've seen, and maybe be intrigued. I mean, they just went with a regular match for the trios title, which I can understand, but it wasn't even built up as special. And it was Top Flight and AR Fox as the opponents. You know what I mean? It wasn't even like main event guys. As the opponents were just kind of like, well, we're going to let them see that the Death Riders get a win. That's what it was. To build up the Death Riders against FTR and Copeland for the pay-per-view. But you didn't even have that done by this point. You know what I mean? Like if you had done that and then those guys ran in and you announced that you got this for the pay-per-view, at least you would have. It's not a main event for the pay-per-view, but at least it was something. It's like to me, it's like you want an angle that leads to either something you're going to wow the people with the match or an angle that leads to the pay-per-view. And really, I would rather do the angle that leads to the pay-per-view. But they didn't do that. And Garcia and Adam Cole, like I presumed when it was over that they'll probably do another match on the pay-per-view. But here we are a week away, and that has not been announced. And number 2, if you're going to do that, you need to make that announcement on that show. when that audience is still watching, as opposed to a week and a half later or the Wednesday before the show when that audience isn't watching anyway. So you didn't lead them to anything like, oh, you want to see the rematch? This is where it's going to be. So it's like I just felt from that standpoint, no, they did not take advantage of their large viewership.
And I think kudos to the fan base for being flexible too, because they are watching their show or one of their favorite shows out of the ordinary time slot, so they're changing up their viewing habit, and I think that's valuable to the station as well. Like they're seeing, like, look, this audience moves. Like it's just not expecting to turn the TV on.
Yeah, some of it was the regular audience, but I mean the big audience were basketball fans, I think, watching this, and you could see one of the things is that where you saw the difference was it was which is funny because when AEW first started, it's one of its great calling cards was that it was such a great young audience, and it's no longer the case at all. Now
they were, like we talked about this, they were the punk rock wrestling company. I think I actually saw Adam Copeland use that term the other day about AEW.
But he used it this week.
I know, but I was thinking, like, no, dude, like if you are in the main event of a show, that means that they're not punk rock, because punk rock is like young and alternative and sort of against the grain a little bit. And so yeah, I think he screwed that one up. But they were that before, and they are now a little bit more sort of like normal wrestling as you expect to see.
They are a number 2 national promotion that gives you a lot of good, that actually specializes on very good matches. But they're the number 2 promotion. They are the alternative, and they're everyone knows they are. Not even the alternative. Everyone knows they're number 2. It's not like there was a period where it's like, oh man, they can catch up and be number 1, or they're giving number 1 fits. No, they're just number 2. Look, at the end of the day, Tony Khan is booking a wrestling show. Somebody's wanted to do since childhood, and he's making a lot of money. He had to spend a lot of money first to get here, but in the end, he's making a lot of money. And as long as he can keep it at this level, and the outside media rights stay at this level, I mean, he'll accomplish something very viable financially, live his dream. I mean, right? I'd say lose hair, but he hasn't lost any hair yet. But you're dealing with a lot of egos and problems and things like that.
It's not even really gray. Like he's doing good.
Yeah, he's in his 40s. Right? 42.
Yeah.
41, 42. Yeah.
So I guess we're going to see more of these, and I think it was Andrew had mentioned that they thought because they have the NHL playoffs coming, he mentioned the Stanley Cup playoffs, that there would be more opportunities maybe to even do longer blocks of shows or something.
Yeah, the only thing I heard is that right now they know of all of the preemptions, I guess is the word, but all of the general Saturday night schedule changes for the rest of the year, so they're aware of the dates. So when they book the arenas for their collision tapings, they know when they can't go live, and when it's cost effective at this point for those shows to be taped on Wednesday, rather than why there's no point taping on Saturday when you're not going live anyway. So there's so they know all that, and they have a general idea of where they're going to be and what they're going to be and everything like that. But again, it's all subject to change. And this was an experiment by TNT, and it was a successful experiment. That's really that's the positive. The negative of it is that I mean, you don't get a lot of chances, and at times Tony's really done well with that first 15 minutes, and I just don't think he did on either of those shows really. I mean, it's just like it's fine. It's not like they were crappy shows. They were good shows, but
they were collisions. That's what they were.
Yeah. I mean, I know the other thing was just not high in star power. I mean, he used the B stars really. You know what I mean? It's not like Moxley and Swerve were out there, or Will Ospreay or Kenny Omega. You know what I mean? It's like not like the Australia. The Australia was awesome. Like I will look back on that one and go like, he was handed something and he nailed it with a great show too. I mean, but this one, I would just say he threw 2 collision shows out there, and I mean, it shouldn't have been. I mean, more people are going to watch I mean, as far as 18 to 49, well, I mean, it's still like more people are going to watch the first half hour of those 2 shows than are going to watch any part of Dynamite, for a long, long time. As far as television itself, if you include streaming, I mean, my gut is that the streaming numbers for Dynamite probably put it ahead of those shows, because those shows are going to get the collision streaming numbers, or even less because they're on it later. And they're not getting, and again, like on Max, they're not getting any NBA lead in. I mean, it doesn't go like, you just keep your thing on. I don't think it goes right to the wrestling show. I think you got to, whatever, reload or whatever. But in this, I don't know that because I didn't watch it.
You just got to, you have to get out of the stream and then go back into the app.
Yeah, but if you're a basketball fan, you're not going to do that. Whereas if you're a basketball fan watching on television, you're just not changing the channel. You may watch and go, oh, wrestling's on. Let's watch for a little while, and then you watch until you're, it's 11:30 and you want to go to bed, type of thing.
Yeah, no, totally. So what did you gather from the Dynamite rating? Because if you're just looking at the linear TV ratings, things are going up.
I really look at the 18 to 49 more than the total viewers. But again, last week's show with Moxley and Swerve, it was going to be up. So it's kind of like, they were down in that one. I would have liked to have seen a better 18 to 34 number, especially because they had so many 18 to 34 viewers on Saturday and Sunday. I mean, that was the other benefit of those college games, which is weird because the games themselves don't draw like the number as far as the young audience by percentage as the wrestling. So the key to that I learned is that of the basketball fans who were watching, the 18 to 34 fans, and in particular 18 to 34 men that watched college basketball, were more apt to not tune out the wrestling and watch the wrestling, be intrigued by the wrestling than any other audience. That's another thing that you learn from that. But all those new fans, did they go and go, hey, I kind of like this thing, I'm going to go watch on Wednesday. I remember one person who's in the company actually brought up, let's see, is there any movement on the Wednesday number from these great numbers that we got on Saturday and Sunday? And the answer was no. It wasn't. It was normal, or it was normal. It was normal what they were doing. I would say lower. The week before was not much higher, but 10% higher. But the week before was a loaded up show. But I mean, if you're looking at just total viewers, they were 5 straight weeks up during a time period where I would have thought every week was going to go down 5,000 viewers because those people are migrating to the streaming every week, and that hasn't happened at all. So it has to be considered, a positive. I mean, the metrics are all going in a good position right now for them. It's not where they were a year ago, but it's better than they were before. So it's positive. You're not going to get to where you were a year ago by snapping your fingers anyway. It's going to be slow.
Obviously, Revolution was a success, and coming out of Revolution, it seems like they're doing much better. But then when I watch the build to the current pay-per-view, I'm not sure that they're necessarily taking full advantage of that. I don't know if this pay-per-view is going to end up being disappointing or not. I have no read on it, but it does feel less important by quite a bit than Revolution did.
I agree. Well, it's a lot less it certainly doesn't have the depth.
And they don't have the same amount of time to build the show either. So maybe it's just Double or Nothing and All In, or the focus is on that, and this one is kind of like a B level pay per view or whatever you would call it, a lesser important pay per view.
I just think that they seem to, like Tony seemed to have everything going, like really, figured out for that last pay per view. And then this one, I mean, he's got a few things. The Megan Bain, Tony Storm thing, you can see he's thought that one out pretty well. But a lot of it just doesn't seem, sort of Moxley, I think, have their, their thing. But overall, the depth is not there like the last show. And again, like if you look at the people who are not even booked yet on this pay per view and we're a week out, I mean, I could probably put together a better pay per view with the guys not on this show, or one similar anyway. So we, the last show, the thing is like we knew everything. I know the tag team thing, they had to switch it at the last minute, and they had built up the other team. Brian Cage and Archer. That was a match that they had been building up for a while, and they had to, because Brian Cage got hurt, they had to switch it, and they switched to Big Bill and Brian Keith. So that, that worked against them. But even like when I looked at the last one, I was like, oh my god, right? It's like I don't know who MJF is wrestling. I don't know Adam Page is wrestling. I don't even know if they're on the card. Other than I would presume Adam Page is running in the main event. I don't know where Will Ospreay is, and it's like he's the top guy in the company, really. So yeah, this one's an interesting as far as the pay per view goes, because if they go back down to the level of Wrestle Dream and All Out, then it was kind of like, okay, now we're back to where we started. If they go and they are down from the last one, which is fine, I would, like if they're down like 5% from the last one or even 10%, I would go, it's fine, it's still good. But if it's like 20% or 25 or 30%, then it's kind of like, maybe it was just that one show rather than something consistently like you're above where you were. So that's but yeah, I'm not like the same time before the last show I was like all excited about the show, and this one is kind of like, oh, there's a pay per view and it's AEW, and it's probably gonna be a really good show. They almost always are. In fact, very close to always. But it's not like that last one where it was just kind of like, hey, we may see the show of the year. Like I'm not feeling that right now.
Mm-hmm. Did you like the first segment with Omega and Ricochet and Speedball?
The interview segment?
Yeah.
I thought Omega was fine. Ricochet was, the deal of Ricochet and the wedding thing was unique.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah, it was different. So I didn't mind it because I like different. I didn't think it was kind of like he's not going to be there and he's being an arrogant heel. I thought that was all right. Bayley, there's something about like where Bayley was coming from. I thought was a unique way to put it and do it. But as he's doing it, I'm like, okay, you're making yourself a babyface. The other guy's a babyface. You don't want to make yourself a heel, so you're doing that type of a thing. I can't say I didn't think like. I don't know. I wasn't moved by it, if that's what you mean.
I was kind of wondering, like, there is a version of Kenny Omega where he plays that inspiring babyface that the fans get behind. There could be another version of Kenny Omega where he plays a little bit more of like the cocky, which was his heel character. And as I'm watching him closely in this segment, he's kind of making fun of the Ricochet segment in a way, because as obviously it's taped. Ricochet has no interaction with them. Like this is him recording a thing, and then Omega at the end said something like, don't leave, or he said something to kind of bring to light that he's not really there. That I thought was interesting, and I didn't sense that he was buying what Speedball was selling necessarily. It was almost like he didn't really think that things were all that hot. And I may be completely reading into the whole thing, but like just the whole like, oh yeah, my boss told me to make it quick, and I made it quick, and like
I'm sure that's what happened. I'm sure he didn't go like, I'll go out there and do a 5-minute match. But there's,
I just wondered if he
on that show.
I see it's some of this is because I see Omega as really like a rare star. And to me, even more than Ospreay, though it is probably Ospreay's time, like I want to see the Kenny Omega babyface run as champion, because I think he's such a unique character in wrestling. Now, would his body hold up, or would he think that he could do it, all the things that you need to be? I don't know that part of it. But when I see him, I feel like he just needs to be in really, really well set up stuff that is very important. And I don't sense as I'm watching this with him that this is really important enough for his character. But then again, he's not the number one babyface. He's, he has the secondary or tertiary title. I'm just dying to see what that would, coming out of 2019, if we change the thing and instead at Double or Nothing, Omega wins that match and then he beats Hangman and he's the first champion. Like, how does that change the trajectory? Do we get that New Japan version of Kenny Omega, at least for the first 6 months or whatever? Like, 'cause that's what I always wanted to see, and we never got to see it. And I don't sense that we're going to get to see it anytime soon either.
It's a weird match because Mike Bailey's so good athletically, and Ricochet's phenomenal athletically, and Kenny's great at laying out a match, and it could be a great match, but at the same time, it's like in the back of my head, it's always like, isn't Kenny Omega better in singles matches than 3-ways? Isn't Kenny Omega and Ricochet really the better match with the two over guys? And Mike Bailey, you kind of get the sense Mike Bailey's being thrown in there for, he's like really, really good wrestler, and he's someone who can lose the match. You know what I mean? It's like I almost get the sense that's why he's in there instead of just being Kenny Omega and Ricochet. But again, they on paper, I think I don't think it's going to be this classic Kenny Omega versus Gabe Kidd match.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with Ricochet, while it wouldn't be the same match, I think it could be a match near that level or even at that level. But in the 3-way, it's like, I guess it's possible too. And it's on paper the best match on the show so far, but I don't feel as strongly about it. To an extent, I think, and with the audience and everything, it's like Mike Bailey just showed up. Yeah. He's they gave him the perfect opponent for a great debut, so he had a great debut. Then they threw him in this thing, the 4-way, and he looked great there. The guy's a great professional wrestler, but I don't know if the audience is ready for him to be in that spot. It's not like he came in like Ospreay, who day one came in and everybody's ready for him. It's Mike Bailey, who, like, let's face it, he was in TNA for years and years and years, and he was one of those guys like Mordos that was in TNA that TNA had, but he might have been X Division champion, and he was second, third match on the pay-per-view, not from the top, but from the bottom, and went out there and wowed everyone. But he was not, he was not a superstar. They would push Steve Macklin ahead of him, and you know what I mean. Whereas Mike's one of these guys. Yes, of course, he's a really good in-ring wrestler. We can always have a great match with him. And here, it's kind of like, what's the number 2, number 3 match on the pay-per-view? So it's like, I don't know. Is he ready for it? But on the flip side is, if he goes out there and has a great performance, it's the most important. It is the most important match of his career.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's gonna pull out all stops, and also to show that, like, hey, I'm up here in this position on this pay-per-view in this championship match, and it doesn't matter if he wins or loses. If he goes in there with a great showing, he makes his career. So in that sense, maybe it'll be really good.
Yeah. Just kind of change course here, and because I was thinking of the WrestleMania build, And in the back of my mind, your voice of saying, it doesn't really matter, they're hot, all of those things, and
yeah, I mean,
understand.
that's true, but I mean, you know this, like, I just did that second John Cena promo, just did nothing for me.
Yeah.
I was so disappointed. I mean, they went in there and they did what I thought was a great angle. Went a little awry, but I thought they did a great angle. Little niche name, fantastic. And now it's kind of like the catalyst of the angle is never spoken about for reasons that nobody even knows, other than like 5 people, right? And then because it's 5 people, no one will tell me. But obviously there's a reason. And it's kind of like it's so jarring that the specter of Dwayne Johnson being all over that feud, and now it's not even spoken about. And then John isn't mad or jealous of Cody. He just hates the fans. And Cody, even though he got pummeled by John Cena and low bloated and everything, he's out there, doing debates with him, not going after him, not being mad at him. And his big thing is not, like, you did this to me and you're not gonna get away with it. It's like, you're insulting my fans and I'm gonna stand up for my fans. It's like, and none of it, I don't buy any of it. Because we all know John Cena's, when he does his fan thing, we all know it's I'm playing bad guy John Cena.
Yeah.
There's no sincerity to it whatsoever.
I just have this thought that, like, this dude has probably thought about this on multiple occasions. Like, if I ever turn heel, here's a great idea. And they never did it, and now they had a chance to do it. And I guess there's a reason they didn't turn him, because they didn't have a good idea to do it, because this is not great.
I mean, like, the first week, I thought the idea was terrible, but I thought John was fantastic and pulled it off, and Cody was really good. But the second week of doing the exact same thing, now it's just a terrible idea, and he's already given, now he's just following up on stuff that...
What did they promise for Raw?
For this coming week?
Yeah.
Isn't it more the same?
I think it was John Cena and Cody Rhodes face-to-face or something like that. Like, we just saw that 2 weeks in a row.
I know.
So I guess my question is, because WWE is so hot, it feels like the build to WrestleMania should be better. And I feel like it's pretty average, but then again, you keep saying that it really doesn't matter because they're going to do crazy business. And I wonder if that is really kind of their enemy, which is their success, especially, with this giant show. Like, there's so many things that they're working on, and the creative of it is one of those pieces, but the promotional aspect is off the charts as far as all of the shows that they're able to put together around this week of stuff.
The business side, phenomenal.
Yeah.
All of these things and all these ideas and everything, phenomenal, right? And I bet, like, all the media that they're going to get, no matter what, I think the creative has really been a major letdown.
Except for us, though, they don't want us there for some reason in the in the building.
Wait, if you're not allowed to go, you're not supposed to be there. I haven't even talked to them, so I don't know when it comes to that. They have not asked me, which is really interesting because normally they would. But
I applied. I put your name on the application. I did not get accepted. I've heard other folks from this website the same, and I think it's because you told The Rock's plans and he got mad at you. I think that's why we're not allowed in.
I don't have any idea, but I mean, I've talked to them all the time. They didn't, like, they know I'm there.
I actually have no idea why. I'm mostly kidding.
Yeah,
it's just interesting the way that, from what I've seen.
Yeah, but they also know. I mean, when it comes to me, they also know that I wasn't going to go to the show, right? Because it's like I've done that one before. And I have to go. And, it's like I don't even like doing it with AEW. But with AEW, it's like I can be right there. You know what I mean? It's an arena setting. It's not that bad. With WWE in a stadium show, I'm in a press box. I'm so far away. You're watching the monitor, but you don't really get in the field because the crowd sound is like 30 seconds out of the monitor. And it's like, to me, what I'm trying to get out of a wrestling show, I do not get going to a WWE stadium show. Okay, so I have to go home and watch it again, and there simply is no time for me to watch 2 shows again and do an issue in the same week. It's actually impossible. So I couldn't, even if I wanted to, and even if they were going to roll out a red carpet for me and all that, it's like I would still say no. So and I've done that already. They know that. So again, like I shouldn't say like, oh, they didn't ask me. It's like they know. So it's not really any kind of deal. But yeah, whatever. That's not really an interesting thing to me. But I do think that I think that the creative, just the Jey Uso thing, I didn't think that was good either.
It's like almost the same story that they told last year at WrestleMania. With Chad Gable was his trainer and making him believe in himself again and all that stuff.
Yeah, but Sami Zayn, he's a more well-rounded actor than Jey Uso, so I think it was a lot better.
Yeah, I don't know why you take away all of Jay's cool confidence and charisma to tell this story, because I think it's actively working against him.
100%. Jay is like, he's the, I don't say the flavor of the month, because it's longer than a month. It's been over a year. But Jay is this thing, kind of like LA Knight, but bigger, that they just kind of gravitate towards some aspect of his personality, and it just got over. And so you ride it, and that's what wrestling's all about. But with this one, they're taking out that aspect to tell this story that actively works against the positives of the character. And I just find it very, I find it lame. I mean, in the end, look, it's like he's going to overcome it. He's going to win. It's a classic old story. The babyface triumphs, help get his confidence last week. I mean, I know that, and I know the ending is fine and all that, but like this aspect of it this week right now was like, man, we're having the babyface going for the world champion. He's tripping over his own 2 feet, and he can't do his moves because he's, whatever. And it's like, this is not a good story at all. Especially when the ideas, you build momentum for the babyface. They're taking away momentum for the babyface with the idea that, well, the story is bigger at the end if we do it this way. It's like, yeah, I don't know. I think the pop for him winning would have been the same either way, and the momentum going into it is much lower.
Did you hear what they're doing about the Hall of Fame and inducting matches?
I did not hear that. That came out today.
I think that came out today, and the first match is should be one of the first matches. Austin and Bret Hart, so they can get both those guys there at the ceremony. That's cool.
Well, as far as the first match inducted, it's interesting because of their own history. They didn't go with Hogan and Andre, but when we look at it, Andre's dead, and Hogan is someone that people would not celebrate, whereas Bret and Austin have a lot better reps to the public.
Linda was blasting Hogan again, and I saw Brooke was.
Oh yeah, I did see that stuff.
Brooke was like, "Sorry guys, like both of my parents, I'm just not talking to them at all. Like they're just crazy."
It's really when I read the Brooke thing, it was really sad. You know what I mean? Because like she was around like these. I don't know. It was really sad, the Brooke thing to me. She was, as the parents were doing their fighting, she was a pawn. They both were looking for her, and I think that she felt that they were being manipulative to her, and so she just wanted out. You know what I mean? But it's just really sad. I didn't know that. I knew that her and Terry were not on good terms. I didn't know that her and her mom were not on good terms for 8 years. I mean, and didn't go to the wedding and hasn't seen the grandchildren. And it's a sad story. It really is. Yeah, the stuff with Linda I didn't know until like this week. So, I mean, I seen them together and stuff, but that's, I mean, it's like 20 years ago, right? 18 years ago, when she was trying to do her musical career and everything like that. And, Linda was her stage mom. I mean, she really was, and Terry was spending, millions of dollars to bankroll her to try to make her a star. And she was I mean, she had her moment of fame on Hogan Knows Best. She was the cute girl and everything like that. But, that's where it's really where it ended. And the attempts to make her, I mean, they wanted her to be Britney Spears. And, obviously she wasn't Britney Spears.
Well, Britney Spears has struggles as well, so I don't know if from a fame standpoint.
From a fame standpoint. Yeah, Britney Spears had probably way more problems than Brooke, realistically.
Do you think that in order to figure out which match to induct, that they looked at all of your WrestleMania star ratings?
They're probably not. But, I mean, Brett Austin's a good one to start with, though.
Yeah.
I mean, it was.
It's my favorite of all the WrestleMania matches.
Yeah, I think it's mine too. I think it's my favorite. If I have to say one, it's up there. Probably they'll go with if they don't do Hogan, they'd probably go with Steamboat and Savage because of the legendary nature of it. Even though, again, the thing with Steamboat and Savage was that it was a great match at a time when WWE fans never saw great matches because the product match-wise wasn't particularly good. So those two guys were like way off the charts. But like if I watched it now, I'd go, wow, I've seen matches like this. I mean, it's still really good though, even by today's
for a WWE match though, it was amazing. If you because you mentioned
in 1987, it was amazing. But at the same time, for me, it wasn't because the reality was that, and Steamboat will say that himself, is the Flair matches in his mind were better matches. But he also, he told me, I remember when I talked about it, he thought the Flair matches were better matches, and it's kind of weird to him. But he also says that people all the time when they meet me, it's always the Savage match.
Yeah, the stage was gigantic for them.
It was a big stage, and it was the first match of that type in WWE history. That NWA, if you would call it, caliber match on a WWE show with two fantastic wrestlers.
And think about the first two WrestleManias. What would have been the best match on the first two WrestleManias? Like maybe Bulldogs against Valentine
Greg
and Beefcake?
Right, and reality is Greg was good, but Beefcake was average at best. The Bulldogs were great. But yeah, I would say that up until that would have been the best actual match at the first two WrestleManias. And then this one, was the best match, like literally at WrestleMania, probably until Brett and Austin, I think.
There's a Savage Warrior.
That was really good.
There's a connection to that match because of the story that they told as well.
Yeah. And then after that, then you start, when you start to get to 2000.
Owen and Brett at WrestleMania 10, and then Michaels and Razor. Those were
Michaels and Razor preceded Brett and Austin. Yeah, Michaels and I mean, I do think that Michaels and Razor was a pretty landmark match at the time. I remember the reaction. That was already people were talking about that was as the best match I'd ever seen. Now that one doesn't hold up as good as the Brett and Owen, because Brett and Owen was a fantastic match that would look good in any period. Whereas Michaels and Razor, because they were the first ones to do a ladder match like that, but there've been ladder matches that exceeded and were better than that later. And I knew. I mean, it was funny because I knew even that day. That when I watched it too, it's like Brett and Owen is really the better match. But for this week, Razor and Shawn is like 5-star match. You know what I mean? It's like it's the one. It's when any poll taken that week, it blew away Brett and Owen's first popularity. But 20 years later, if you did a poll and made people today watch both those matches, I would suspect that most of them would say Brett and Owen was the better match.
Yeah, I think it's aged a lot better. And at that time, not a lot of people had seen anything like that before with Michaels and
nobody had. They'd never seen. That's the first ladder match almost anyone had seen other than if you went to the house shows. And some people said some of those house show matches were at that level were better. I went to the one I think was. I know obviously it was in the Bay Area, but I'm pretty sure it was in San Jose, and it was not as good as the Mania match. But it was really for a WWE house show match, it was about as good as it gets. I mean, they practiced that thing 25 times before they got to Mania, so that helped it a lot too. I don't know if 25 might be the wrong number, but I'm just saying they wrestled many times before in ladder matches setting up the Mania match. But yeah, then after that though, you start getting once you get into 2000, and you have the modern era of wrestlers in WWE, you get a lot more good matches. The Benoit, Triple H, Shawn Michaels three-way, and
they're not inducting that one though.
No, that one's Race from History. Yeah, the ones Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens against the Usos.
Yep.
I mean, there've been some. I mean, and many others. There've been like the Bryan Danielson three-way. They can't induct that one this year either. But yeah, I think if they're going to do this, they'll probably go Savage and Steamboat next, because that's the one I think they kind of have to.
No, WrestleMania 2 Battle Royal with the NFL stars.
Yeah,
Jimbo Covert. All right, so
I told you Jimbo Covert's story, right?
I don't remember it. What is it?
Oh, I met Jimbo Covert.
Yeah, because he was on the Bears.
He was on the Bears. Yeah. And he told me all about the stuff in the rehearsal and everything like that with Ernie Holmes and Andre the Giant. You know that, right?
Were they fighting?
No, but Ernie Holmes was just going off on how he could take all these guys.
Oh yeah.
And Andre just gave him this look and goes, you talk too much. Oh my God. I mean, there's all these football players are there and they're all tough guys, right? And they just see Andre. It's Andre probably, at that stage probably wasn't going to be all that tough because what year was this? Is 85, right? And then
86.
86. Well, the Maida thing was, what year was the Maida thing? 86, 87. But then it's football players aren't trained, martial artists, and Maida for whatever he was and wasn't. I mean, he was a very trained martial artist. I don't know how he would do in a real, in a real MMA fight. Maybe not well, maybe okay, but he was trained in kicking. These football players. But but when Maida, it was in there with Andre. I mean, it's pretty clear that in a sport fight, Maida was destroying him and would destroy him. At that stage of his life.
Yeah, I mean, Andre has to get his hands on you. How does he get his hands on you when he's not very mobile?
When he can't move, exactly. Yeah.
So you wrote about the TNA moves from this weekend. I guess my question, and I asked you this off air, but my initial wonder was how was this WWE influenced in any way?
I don't think so. Although, as partners of such with WWE, I would think that they may have consulted WWE and said that WWE may have had knowledge of it at that time. But I don't know that they did. You know what I mean? I don't really have an answer as far as for sure. As far as it's Carlos Silva move, and is it cost cutting because we're spending all this money on this product and it's not making any money, or is it just him wanting to get his people in, you know what I mean? Have his team in. This is not his team. This is somebody else's team. So I guess what we'll find out is if there are a similar number of new hires as the people that let go, they don't just him trying to get his guys in. if there are fewer new hires, a few but not as many as would let go, then we would go and say that it's cost cutting. So the future, the very near future, will give the answer to that.
All right, so you wrote a story on George Foreman, and we are not a boxing podcast, but I thought it was interesting just because when that news came out,
We just finished the show, right?
yeah, I was sad, but then sometimes it's hard to be sad because you realize how old folks are. But still, like he was, a lot of people are living, into really late ages, and to think that George Foreman, just this giant, he was George Foreman, the monster, and he turned George Foreman the teddy bear, and
Yeah.
I just loved seeing him and hearing him, and just knowing that he was involved in boxing just sort of made me feel a little bit better about boxing as I was watching.
Yeah, I always found him to be very funny, which is funny because when he was young, I never, you got no humor out of George Foreman whatsoever. I never saw anything humorous about George Foreman until he was like, 40 years old and made the comeback, right? And then he's doing all these talk shows, and it's like, this guy's hilarious. When he was younger, it's like, there was no humor in him at all.
Yeah.
He was just the Mike Tyson of his era. And I mean, I think the thing that was so interesting to me, when I think back with perspective, is how when Mike Tyson got exposed by Buster Douglas, okay, he remained a drawing card for whatever it was, 8 more years. Every fight was gigantic when Mike Tyson fought. Okay, when George Foreman lost to Ali, it was like it was all gone. It's like he still fought, and I think he beat Frazier again, but it was like it really like George Foreman, like when everyone's different. When Ali lost the title to Frazier, he got bigger because of his ability to talk honestly, and he remained huge.
He also had an out in that fight, right? The out was he was unfairly, in a lot of people's minds, in some people's minds fairly, but he was unfairly banned from boxing, and thus
It was unfair.
take away something from him. And so Frazier was kind of part of the thing that was taking something away from him, and so he always had an out to come back in, which is he was they didn't allow him to fight anymore, so he needed to get back to that.
Right, and he had the 3-year layoff and everything like that. So he wasn't himself. He needed to get back to where he was. And you know what? I mean, the reality of Ali was is that he even though his more famous fights were after the layoff, he was not as good as he was before. He
was older. Like boxing is all about speed and instinct and reaction time, and he's going to lose that just by not even doing it. He's going to lose it.
Right. Well, the thing with him, different from Foreman, is that a power puncher, whether it's MMA or boxing, he's going to have more longevity because you do keep your power until you're 40. I mean, but if you slow down, you're going to get hit a lot more. But you can be competitive if you've got the big punch. Whereas Ali was never a big puncher; he was a speed guy, reflex guy. But with Foreman, it was like after he lost to Ali, like it was never like Tyson. And I mean, to me, like if I really look at it from the big knockout standpoint, I mean, Foreman was better than Tyson. And I think like the Foreman, you never know. I mean, it's like people do get better and all. I mean, in the mythical comparisons of boxers and all, it's like I just remember as a kid. The big thing when this is very young, right? It was who was better, Ali or Rocky Marciano, right? Mm-hmm. So I started studying footage of Rocky Marciano, and my conclusion was this is an absolutely ridiculous thing. Rocky's small, he's not anywhere near as fast. He'd get destroyed, But if you say that, those old guys, they were so tough, the toughness that these guys don't have. And it's like, I'm sure he was mentally tough, but come on, he'd get destroyed. And so and I remember like I would watch like Lennox Lewis and think, look at how big and agile and everything he is. Those guys that I watched when I was a kid, it's like they're not going to be able to deal with this guy. No. There's no way. So it's like me saying like, Foreman would beat Tyson. It's like I don't know that that's the case because people get better, but I do know that the Foreman knockouts that I saw, and I'd see Foreman go out there, I thought he was every bit like as scary or scarier than Tyson to me, and that's what made him. But once he got exposed, as not being invincible, it was like I don't say it was all gone, but it really was gone.
For Foreman,
and also he had, by the time he's 28, he's mentally shot.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, which is, we didn't really talk about mental health and all of that stuff back then. But if you think about what the promoters were telling him at the time, you're going to be the biggest star in sports. And then the second he loses to Ali, everybody jumps off the ship and jumps on Ali's ship. And so if you're Foreman, you're a young dude. You're
and he can never get a rematch.
You're young, you're impressionable, but you also see the evil of the sport in front of your very own eyes, and I think that really affected him. But at the same time, he was talking about this as he would say, he would see spirits and he would see ghosts, and he thought he was hallucinating, and like, there's like dark periods, and that's because I was always asked my dad when Foreman came back. I knew the story of the fight, but I always would ask my dad, okay, George Foreman's the youngest, biggest star. Ali beats him. What did Foreman do after that? And he basically said nothing. He just went away.
Well, he had a few decent wins that were somewhat publicized, but they weren't like the Ali Foreman fight. Okay, like that was one of those nights. The only 2 nights that I can remember. When it came to boxing in my lifetime, when the world stopped, were Ali Frazier 71, the first one, and Ali Foreman, the blue in Zaire. Like the other Ali Fraziers were giant. There's all the Tyson Holyfield was huge. Duran and Duran and Leonard and all that. Like there's been many things, in big boxing matches that were, you know what I mean. But none to me were like those two in the sense that everybody, you couldn't, if you were not a boxing fan at all. You were aware of this and you were probably listening to the radio if you were not someone who was willing to go to closed circuit or anything, and going with an AP round by round of those fights, which is what we did with me and all of my friends. We're just sitting there with our radios listening to round by round, and then when at the end of the round when the guy goes and the AP scores around 4 and we're all popping like we were little kids. But it's like I never like those two fights were much bigger than culturally than any of the fights since. But when Foreman lost that fight, it's like he had other fights that were talked about and on Wide World of Sports, and we saw them, but he wasn't the same guy. That's what it was. It's like he went in there and he was a killer, and he knew he was a killer, and everybody knew he was a killer. And when Ali exposed his weakness, it was like, okay, he was still winning his fights, but he didn't come off as scary. The scariness thing that was his aura was gone. And then, at 28, he's out. Just quits, stops doing it. And in the last few fights, like, he lost to Jimmy Young, which was like, it was kind of like, oh my God, look, Jimmy Young was a very good boxer, but it was kind of like, he was never a George Foreman, and it was kind of like, what the hell happened to this guy? It was mental issues. And then he comes back 10 years later as this like comedic guy. And comes back and they feed him a bunch of tomato cans and he's on the talk shows and just so likable. And then he actually wins the title.
Well, he's a minister and he comes back to fight to help raise money for like this youth organization that he's.
Right.
But he also sees that the light at the end of the tunnel is if he gets there, probably the biggest money fight of his career against Mike Tyson, which never happens, by the way, because he doesn't actually get there. And you know, you wrote about the Moore fight, and I just remember thinking, this dude gets hit way too much now. We're kind of at a point where this ride should be over, because in previous fights, his face was getting all puffy, and you could tell like he wasn't able to block the punches anymore. And then he knocks out Michael Moore in a fight that Michael Moore is winning, but he just throws the perfect chopping hand, or I even forget the punch, but it didn't look like a devastating punch on television.
Right.
But then Michael Moore just completely lost equilibrium and stuff. So yeah, it's a fascinating story, but he's always going to be tied to Ali, and he realized that as well. Even though he's on the other end of that fight, he really accepted that part of it, and he always put over Ali, even though, like you said, like there was no realistic way that he was going to fight him again, because he knew that his part of his story is tied to one of the biggest fights in boxing history that he was on the opposite side of.
Yeah. But then he remakes himself, and becomes, one of the great celebrity endorsers of all time. With like Michael Jordan, George Foreman, John Madden, right? They're like these guys that just, whatever they did in their sport. I mean, obviously Michael Jordan in his sport was, maybe the greatest of all time. But George Foreman was John Madden was a great coach, but more famous as an announcer and the Madden game.
Mm-hmm.
And Foreman to the general public now is the George Foreman grill, more than the boxing. So it's an interesting story. From someone who, and he was from this area too. I mean, I think he was living in Texas.
He moved here, I think, like during his teen years maybe, but yeah, I think he was born and raised in Texas.
Yeah, he's from Texas. He was living in Pleasanton when I lived here and I was a kid. He was in Pleasanton. People knew about him. He was always talked about, even before the Olympics. That's the other thing. Is like this guy boxed for he had 20 fights, amateur. And boxed for maybe a year, and he wins an Olympic gold medal, and that's 68. So I had not even moved here when he won the gold medal. So when I moved here, it was George Foreman, the Olympic gold medalist, lives in Pleasanton, not far from here, and he's knocking people out every month in these one-sided boxing matches to give him a giant record at first, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he gets to building him up for until he gets to Frazier, and like I remember with the Frazier fight, it was like, I mean, I don't remember what the odds were, but in hindsight, like you should look back and go like, well, of course he beat Frazier. Nobody thought that at the time. I mean, he was a guy who was considered way too inexperienced and simply not good enough. He had a lot of knockouts, but they weren't against quality people or anything. And Frazier was going to take every shot this guy can deliver. He was going to get tired, and Frazier was going to knock him out late. I mean, everybody knew the script, right? And he knocked Frazier down, was it 6 times or whatever? I mean, I remember that one. That down goes Frazier was like that was like the iconic boxing call of all time. Was like over and over. Like just knocks him down, he finishes him. And I think it was round 2. Mm-hmm. And it's like no, he's the heavyweight champion of the world. And it was a really big deal here.
So the rope-a-dope strategy that Ali uses is the same storyline for Rocky 3. So Clubber Lang plays, he's not as big as Foreman, obviously, but it's like the idea of somebody who just is unstoppable. And the strategy to beat Foreman was to exhaust him. And because if he wasn't going to hit you, he was going to make himself tired from swinging. And Ali even mentioned like just the amount of punishment his arms were taking from those, just trying to stop those shots. And the whole thing, like there's some books about that night that are really good.
Sting Vader did that match off of Ali Foreman.
Yeah, I remember that. All right, let's move on. A couple of quick things before we get out of here. So you have 2 books coming out pretty soon. One of them next week, maybe?
The 98 book is coming out this coming week, as far as I know. Yeah.
And that's a yearbook style. That's not all of the issues, which you can find on this website. So that's yearbook style. Yeah. And then I guess 85 is all of the issues, and that is coming out, at least as far as I know, sometime soon.
Okay. Yeah. 98 was a real big year. I mean, it was a turnaround WWF. I mean, they were losing in 97, and then the Bret Hart thing makes it even worse. And then 98 is Stone Cold and Vince McMahon, and WCW starts staggering, and WCW's on fire. And it was actually WCW's best year ever by far for business. But it's not remembered as well because WWF is making a rebound and starts beating them in the TV ratings. And Awesome just gets so hot, and the but it's also the year that Goldberg got hot, and Goldberg helped them a lot. But it is the year where you could see the booking in WCW really fall apart, even though the numbers were still super strong. And WWF is just, Austin McMahon was just great, and they had a great supporting cast. Wayne and Triple H, or Mick Foley, those guys are really, really, really big. And then Eric does the thing where he challenges Vince on the pay-per-view, which like to me was like that was such a big moment because the TV started getting really terrible then, and WWF was not getting terrible, and so that was a turning point. But Bill was so over.
It's kind of desperation in hindsight, though.
It felt very desperate. It was like I remember my thought was just like let's get a reality check here. Bill Goldberg's over like crazy. The business is super strong, but WWF is winning on TV ratings. It's like, so what? It's not where your money's being made, but they had such a loser attitude of, oh my God, we're losing, and they just fell apart mentally with the idea they're losing. It's like, you just go like, we're still doing great, but the product just went to hell. They were panicking, they went to hell, they were desperate. Eric challenges Vince to a fight on pay-per-view, and it's like, it's so bad, and it's like they just seemed like they were so uncool, and the only thing that was keeping them alive really to me was Goldberg. And then they started, Hogan gets so jealous of Jesse that he quits so he can run for president because Jesse won the governorship, which was another thing. It's like, my God, come on. And it was just, they still did great business until it was about March '99 was when you could really start seeing, maybe April '99, where all the damage they'd done the year before started to really take hold. And but '98, business wise for 2 companies, I mean '98 for 2 companies that were on fire. '98 was a giant year for American wrestling. Yeah.
Speaking of '98. I only got to see about the first 15 minutes of the Dark Side of the Ring, which is focused on Mick Foley, specifically around the Hell in a Cell match. Though his entire family is interviewed for the show, so it's kind of cool to see his kids and his wife. And as I was watching this show, I was thinking, man, I'm so glad we don't have these like death-defying daredevil instincts anymore. And then I was like, wait a second, like I'm Darby Allin, and then you see Moxley's back get daggered, and you see the meat on his back. Like, I know there's probably.
But that's different. Like what Moxley did was one thing, but what Darby did was never as extreme as those 2 bumps Mick took, but they were very, very extreme, without a doubt. Absolutely, nuts. What Moxley did, that's the hardcore stuff that like they do in all over the world. It's not as dangerous as it looks.
It's just how much pain can you take in order to get a reaction?
Right. But I mean, obviously the Mick Foley Undertaker match is legendary. Yeah, I watched some of it. The thing now, in hindsight, watching it now was like how absolutely, completely irresponsible almost everyone involved in that match was. It's like number one for doing it, but number two, after the first bump, to let him get back in the ring. You know what I mean? Like, because I do remember when he did that, it's like, okay, you just, my thought watching was like, you just broke your back. It's like, you probably just ended your career. And he gets up, and he ends his career a second time. And he gets up again. It was and Terry Funk's in there, and Undertaker's like chokeslamming him to buy time for Mick to recover. And Terry Funk's basically his role. And it's not like everyone involved, from Vince to the agents to the referee. It's just like, this guy's got, I know that they didn't treat concussions like they would now, but this was more than just a concussion. It's like, this guy, he's got a separated shoulder, and God knows what other injuries he has. And he climbs back up the cage to do that second bump. And it's like, someone should just do the X sign, get over. It was so irresponsible in hindsight. At the time, it was more of this horror movie, live that you're watching. I just remember my reaction was kind of like, well, I remember, you could actually probably read back my issue. It was like from that week, because it was like, well, I just saw this match is going to be remembered as one of the greatest matches of all time. And God, is this bad for wrestling?
Well, so Foley, he says, now I don't know if he's kind of changing the narrative or not, but he said he had to do something because he was worried that this was kind of the end of the road for him. Now, if you remember, before that,
no, I didn't see the whole thing. I saw like 25 minutes of it.
Yeah, me too. And in the first 15 minutes where he said,
okay, so I didn't. Okay, no, I've heard him talk about this for 25 years, 27 years. The thing is that what I know was Undertaker came in with, I believe it was a broken ankle, and he couldn't do anything, and Mick panicked because there's only one Hell in a Cell match before this, as far as I remember, which is Shawn Michaels Undertaker. Incredible match, best cage match I'd ever seen up to that point in time. Just blow away. That was on the night that Pillman died.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it because nobody could work that night. Every match, if you watch that show, every match sucked because everyone's heard about Pillman, and Shawn went out there, and it's like, I don't know if it's good or bad, because it was a lot more Shawn than Undertaker. Not that Undertaker didn't do anything, but Shawn put on this one-man performance that was incredible, and it was just like, it was always like, okay, you're one of the best wrestlers I've ever seen, but my God, my friend just died and you didn't give a shit. That's my reaction was, you're so into your thing, you don't even give a shit. Every other wrestler in this company could not wrestle this night worth a shit, and you're out there doing the best match of one of the best matches of your career, it's nothing. So it's kind of I thought man, what a single-minded, determined guy. But at the same time, it's like, how can you do this? I couldn't watch this thing. I didn't have to perform. I couldn't even watch this thing. And I'm just in this haze watching this thing, going like, oh my God, Shawn Michaels is one of the greatest performers I've ever seen. How can you do it? But anyway, that's what they had to live up to.
Yeah.
And then Undertaker wasn't hurt. Seriously hurt. So it was up to Mick to do something to not stink the joint up. They were scared shitless, or Mick was. I don't know if Mark was. I know Mick was scared shitless. They were out there and not be able to live up to this grandiose thing because it's Undertaker and Mankind. We're supposed to have this violent Hell in a Cell match, and one of them couldn't go. So Mick devises all this stuff to make it, in hindsight, that was actually more memorable than the Shawn and Taker match, even though the Shawn and Taker match was a million times better.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, this season is kind of, not that I forgot, but I was really busy. But I like these shows, so I'm gonna make sure that I check in on them this week. But it does feel like maybe the least amount of buzz for a Dark Side season.
I haven't even heard Rain for Wednesday yet.
Yeah. So hopefully they, because I like the shows and I like to talk about them, and so I hope they keep doing.
They're always really well done. I will say, always, they take a topic. There's some interesting ones. I'm on the one with Billy Jack Haynes and Superstar. I'm the Billy Jack Haynes one I think is gonna be sad. I'm kind of worried about it in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Because they interviewed Billy, and it's just such a sad ending. The Billy Graham I'm looking forward to because, Billy's a very complex subject in a lot of ways, and I'm interested in how they handled it. I think that they talked to his wife. I'm pretty sure they did, and other people very close to him. So, they have that. But yeah, there's Tony Halmy is this week with Ludwig Borga, which is it's actually quite the story too. But yeah, there's a lot of interesting ones for this season.
You wrote about Bill Mercer, the passing, and it was so weird because you guys had just talked about him because he's probably less than a month ago, right? When you were trying to figure out who were some of the oldest people in wrestling alive.
Yeah. When maybe when we talked about Bob Ellis. He was the second oldest living guy because Dick Madrano was actually the oldest, 103. Bill Mercer, what an incredible life story. That's one of the things. I knew most of it, but really digging into Bill Mercer, that was one. To me, as far as stories I've written, I was more into this one than a lot because it's like, he was, he was actually most famous worldwide for World Class Championship Wrestling. But in his life, even though it was, he never dissed wrestling, and he never, brought up the CD side or anything like that. And he was not a great wrestling announcer by any means, but he was great. He was great on the skits because he played the newsman, and that's what he was. And that worked in Dallas because they'd all seen him as a real newsman. But him, his legacy is as a broadcast teacher, a college teacher, because so many of the top media people, and not just in Dallas, but several of them, that went on to major things, nationally, came out of his class. He taught. He had many students, and they all revered him. And to me, that was the most interesting thing. That in the reading, the Kennedy assassination and the Ice Bowl,
Mm-hmm.
This guy did Super Bowls and everything like that, but the Ice Bowl, that's another one. It's that is something that will never happen again because
how do we even know if that the last play of the game was a touchdown or not, or how do you know what the field was like, and who's making that call, and
it's 70 below zero with a wind chill. Do you know what that's like?
Actually, I don't. I've never been anywhere near that before.
I was at 40 below in Kansas City. The wind chill was probably 5 to 10 below, actual temperature. But playing a football game, it's like they would never, in a million years, there will never be a football game like that again just because they're going to call it off. You know what I mean?
They do that already for games. They just, for weather reasons, it's not safe for the fans to be there. It's not safe to play a game in which guys could get crazy injured. I
think they should have called it off when the band rehearsed and their instruments froze to their mouths.
Oh, gosh.
You know what I mean? And those people were playing. They were, several of those players were hospitalized after that game for frostbite, hypothermia. You know what I mean? It was horrendous. I was at a Giants Chicago Bears NFL championship game at the Meadowlands, 1990, and it was cold as shit. I couldn't even wait for the game to end. I'm sitting there, but it's like that mentality that you have where I can't go home. It's an NFL championship game, even though the Bears were getting killed. But that was uncomfortable just being in the stands. I just imagine the referee in the opening play blows his whistle to start the game, and it's frozen in his mouth. He has to tear it out, and there's blood all over his face because the skin is like that. Because he tears his lips and mouth open.
Now you just gave Moxley his next spot. I don't know if that one happened.
So that's the story of that game. And so I knew he broadcasted the game. I knew the Kennedy stuff I all knew. What I didn't know was that the television tape of that game does not exist.
Yeah.
That's the one that was like, oh my God. And there's two tapes of the game. They're both radio broadcasts. One's the Green Bay thing, which still exists, and one is Dallas, which is the one that Bill Mercer did, which is the more famous tape of the game of the two. And it's like, yes, of the one of the greatest games in NFL history, one of the most famous games in NFL history, with that last second play, and Bill Mercer's the announcer. And it's like I was not aware of that aspect of it. But a lot of the other stuff, and I wasn't aware of how many students of his had really gone on to better things and all that, and how well respected he was. I lived in Dallas. I knew he was very respected as far as a newsman goes. You know what I mean? He was, but again, like it's like to me then when I was living there, it's like God, he's not a very good wrestling announcer at all. It's like passed by, like one of those old guys that didn't know any of the modern moves. You know what I mean? But I mean, in the town, it was kind of like it's Bill Mercer, the sports guy, right, from our childhood, and he's doing world-class wrestling. And he helped from a local standpoint. I mean, he was absolutely positive to it because his ability and credibility as a real newsman, when he would speak so effusively about the Von Erichs and this great, wonderful family, even though we all know the other side of it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But the way he did that to the public, it was like those guys. I mean, like they were so over. They were like the Kennedys with their own flaws too, right? But they were like that, in that market. Like we all knew about the drugs and everything, but to the public, it was like this is the Christian, family, and they're like our older brothers. They're the fantasy boyfriends. I mean, it was a period in wrestling that 82, 83, 84, but really 83, 84. That period in Dallas wrestling was completely different from any period in any wrestling ever that I've seen. As far as, I mean, more teenagers and women, as far as girls, as far as fans go. Like, I mean, I'm sure Jerry Lawler in his own territory was probably as over as they were, or I would say Bruno because Bruno's such a big marketer. Hogan, maybe Hogan. I mean, maybe Hogan. I mean, you maybe compare it, but it's a different kind of over. I mean, like, and Bill was. I mean, he was part of the package, and so that shouldn't be forgotten. And that television show that he did, it was a state-of-the-art show. It was way ahead of what everybody else did, and it's a super important period in pro wrestling history to learn from and all that. But what a fascinating life this guy led. I mean, and his students, this guy's in his 80s and 90s, and they're like on national TV, and they're like one of them is sending him, please watch my broadcast and critique me, and he's like, you're doing great, and then you give him like 2 or 3 points, and it's like, I thought of like 95-year-old Elio Gracie sitting there with when stories I used to hear about Elio Gracie where they would all be watching the fights and everything, and he would just be silent, right? And they're all going like this, and he would say nothing. And all of a sudden, he would like blurt out 2 or 3 things that none of them could figure out because he had like 75 years of maybe more, maybe 80 years of studying the finer points of this art, and he saw things that nobody else could see at 80 years old. Not 80, close to 90 years old at this point.
All right, last thing. Well, I just want to ask you one question from a listener, and we'll get out of here because I do have something work related that I have to do pretty quickly. But okay, from David, he essentially asking if you think it would be a good approach for AEW to, instead of targeting some of the WWE main roster castaways that who maybe aren't top stars but just have that WWE name, to instead target some of the NXT folks and give them bigger money than WWE would be giving them at this point because they're still on, they're not on the main roster, someone like a Jada Parker or a Trick Williams, and pay them more now because you see potential and as a way to kind of compete for talent with WWE.
I think it's brilliant. Yes, absolutely. I mean, it'd have to be a few, but it's like they're not making so much, and you could. I mean, it's a ballsy move, but that is what to find the people. The other one is if they had a way to do it, is to like I was thinking like Wyatt Henderson, right? You know what I mean? It's like somebody like some people like that like the problem with AEW is that they have a training facility and there's no way to start people from scratch. But it would be but find guys and make them like your new Wyatt Henderson, by the way, is going to serve in the Air Force, and he's not going to be available just yet. Although he's talking about MMA, and actually I wouldn't do it with him, but I mean it's like I just threw him out as a name of a college athlete that because WWE, look, they had great success with Kurt Angle and Brock Lesnar and people like that. They didn't with Gable, but they did with many of the others. And it's like it's a lot better, to take guys that are 25, 28 years old rather than I mean again, some of the guys that they've taken that are in their late 40s or 50s that it's like it's a short-term thing, but it doesn't really pay off. And every situation is different. Like I do believe Adam Copeland was a big success for them, great attitude and everything like that. The problem is there's too many of them. Not any one of them. I mean, even like Bobby Lashley, when he was out there, the promo thing's a different story, but it's like he's old, but he looks great and he's intimidating, and they don't have that tough guy thing there. You know what I mean? So it's a unique character there. And Bobby Lashley was the only guy over 45 on that roster. I would think that's great, but there's just so many. And Tony's sort of seen it, and he's sort of cutting back on it. But I mean, that's a problem. But I would think the other thing is that if you go, I mean, the thing is like Trick Williams is an example. Okay, like the problem with Trick Williams is that going to AEW, the first thing everyone's going to see because they're so used to better wrestling is that he's not that good, and it doesn't matter how good his promos are. It's going to be tough. Jada Parker though, I think that's a good one, but she doesn't really that big of a name. But at the same time, she's probably not making that much money to where you couldn't afford to rate her. Because one of the things with some of those people is like, you can just pay them way more, and WWE would probably go to WWE and probably get a raise to a giant number. But that's not the worst thing either. I mean, for the business, that's not the worst thing. Is to get the word to some of those people that you think that can go and they can get you 20 good years or 15 or whatever years, and some of them will just go to WWE and WWE will, okay, here, he's offering you $500,000, even though you're untested. We're going to offer you $2 million. But that's great. That's great for wrestling if you do that. Rather than you're making $85,000 a year or $100,000 a year or something like that. But yes, I actually like that strategy a lot.
All right. So I think we're done here. So what's the schedule with you and Ryan this weekend?
Sunday night, no big shows really this weekend, just Collision and SmackDown. Next week's the big one with New Japan, UFC, and the AEW pay-per-view. 3 straight days, essentially, or two straight days, whatever. And did you see the MLW show at Arena Mexico?
No.
MLW and CMLL are doing a joint show on May 2nd at Arena Mexico. I don't think it's like, I don't know that Mystico and Kushida's main event, but by the way, Mystico's injury is pretty serious. As far as it's partially torn tricep, torn ligaments in his ankle. I mean, it's he got pretty banged up. And I kind of knew it was going to come just because he's in his 40s and he's working at such a high rate, so many matches a week. You know what I mean? Like every time I watch him, it's like you don't have to do this much. And it always, unfortunately, with guys that work that hard, especially when they get older and everything, it does catch up to you if you do that those many matches. But anyway, yeah. So that's the next weekend's a pretty big weekend.
And then we're going to see the Sharks tomorrow night.
We're going to see the Sharks tonight tomorrow night. Yep.
All right. That is it from here. For Dave, I'm Garrett. To everyone, thanks for watching and listening.